Welcome everybody to this next episode of Your Music, Your Story. Today we're going to change it up a little bit. We're moving away from bands, and we are up in Salt Lake City, and we're going to talk with my sister Rebecca about her musical journey. And you can tell us all the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff. Ooh, okay.
And we'll even get some recordings of her singing later. We'll put those in there.
All right, sounds good.
So let's just start off. So where'd you start with your musical? When did it start for you?
Where probably it starts for a lot of kids. You know, third grade, your mom gets you in piano lessons, has you singing at talent shows. That's where it started.
So she got you in talent shows?
Mostly church.
Oh.
Church and school. I don't remember doing any community. Well, I don't remember it anyway. But, so that's where it started. Didn't go very far there because I hated piano lessons and successfully boycotted that tyranny. And I also boycotted the singing solos. She used to have me sing solos when family would come over too. Rebecca, sing a song.
And I don't even remember. Maybe I was too little for that.
I was pretty young. I think by the time I was 10, I'm like, I'm done with that. That's embarrassing. I am not singing solos ever again.
Down with the man, Mom.
Yeah. I think at some point I looked around. I'm like, no one else is singing solos. Why am I making a spectacle of myself? And I just said, I'm not doing that. It's so embarrassing. So.
Was she disappointed? Like, I'm assuming she really wanted you to.
I must have been a really cute singer. So I'm sure she was bummed by that. But when I was 12, I kind of took a liking to the piano.
After rejecting it?
After rejecting it.
Or I guess lessons, I guess.
I only had it for a year when I was like 8. And I hated it. I didn't like the teacher. So I was probably just a punk. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, about 4 years after I had sworn those off, I don't know, I just passed the piano one day and said, sat down. And it was a really beginning version of Greensleeves. And if it had been anything more complicated, I might have said, yep, I'm out of here.
I'm done.
There's a reason I quit that business. But it wasn't. It was a super easy version of Greensleeves. And so I spent some time plunking it out one by one until I could put both hands together. Da, da, two notes at a time at the most. And finally I could play Greensleeves. And then I'm like, so I turned the page. And I just played the next song. And then I turned the page until I could play the next song. And then I had to find another book.
Because you were done with that one? So you just learned them all?
Learned most of them. I had to stay away from some rhythms I could tell were too hard for me. And I'm like, I don't really know. I don't know. So I skipped some because they looked kind of hard. Too many dots, too many double bars, You
look at an ant walk across this thing with ink?
I've never heard that, but yes. Yeah. But yeah, over the years, I would always just sit down and play the piano. When I went to college, I took all my music with me and I copied a whole bunch. I had a huge bag and I would walk half a mile up to the nearest church and just find a piano and play. I loved it. It was therapeutic. I think I really liked the challenge of learning stuff and trying to figure it out and playing it.
So you have a composition. So you don't know what you're playing, and then eventually you have you can play a full song kind of a thing, that accomplishment.
Yeah, I think I liked the challenge of it. And it felt good. It's like achieving something awesome. And I played a lot of old stuff from like the 60s and 70s and 50s because that's the music Mom and Dad had kicking around the house,
Yeah.
So I had a lot of that stuff. But then they had some classical compilation books that I picked through, but those ones were pretty hard. I didn't really dive into much classical till I was more of an adult, but I was always limited, and I knew I was limited, but I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, yeah.
What I've noticed in learning some of the older songs, I remember Mom, when I started playing drums, she said, look, if you can learn to play every Elvis song, I'll buy you whatever drum set you want.
Wow.
And I was like, you're stupid and Elvis sucks. So, no. But looking back, I mean, a lot of the drum beats in there, and a lot of them are fairly simple. But there's some that are extremely complicated. Some of those old songs you just don't really think are complicated. They're a lot more complicated than I thought. Is that the same thing with some of those older music on the piano? Were there some, or were they just all fairly easy for you?
That's a good question. I mean, I picked up some books, some anthologies that had more modern pop music in it. Endless Love. I don't know. I could think of some of these, a lot from the 80s. I didn't get into those as much. I don't know why. So I don't know if maybe the chords and the melodies were more appealing or more interesting generally than the 80s stuff, or maybe the anthologies I had picked up were too simple. And I don't know, but I liked a lot of the older stuff. I don't know, I just liked it.
You didn't get into Bon Jovi?
No, but hey.
I know Julian there did.
No, but I did get a Queen anthology a few years ago, so I could play Bohemian Rhapsody and stuff. It's just really fun.
Well, that's one of those songs that if you play, everyone wants to sing. It doesn't matter who it is. If that song comes on, everyone wants to sing that song.
See, and I don't know if you know this, Jeff, because you're way out in California, but well, we haven't done it for a while. I mean, we'll always sing together at Christmas time, but we used to get together and like sing during the year anytime. We'd sing Broadway stuff, and it was always hilarious with her antics. Oh my gosh. Anyways, so I bought that because I thought, oh yeah, we're all going to sing Bohemian Rhapsody. We're going to love it. I don't think we ever did. I think for some reason it kind of pittered out before we ever I could play that well enough to. Anyway,
that's funny.
Someday.
One day.
We'll all be doing it around the piano.
Okay, so we're making a break into this. We're going to insert some of Becky's singing. So I'll let her introduce this first piece.
So this one is from The Messiah. This is actually a tenor solo traditionally, but they didn't get a lot of men trying out. But I've always loved it. So this is Every Valley Shall Be Exalted from The Messiah, Handel's Messiah.
So now are you pretty good at sight reading, or does it still take you a few times through to get a piece down?
I'm pretty good at sight reading.
Okay.
But I was still really limited in what I could even sight read until 10 years ago, 8 years ago. I had all my kids in piano lessons, and my oldest daughter just wanted to be done with it. She was like a junior, senior. She's like, I'm done. So I didn't want to quit on the teacher, all cold turkey. So I said, well, I'll just take over the last half of the year.
Oh, that's nice of you.
Yeah, I could improve. I kind of wanted to improve, but it was like 4 months, right? So I'm like, I'll learn what I can. I'll play the hymns better, whatever. I take a few things. Well, she said, bring a few things that you want to work on. I'm like, okay. So I took some very early intermediate classical stuff that I was playing. Who knows? Minuet. Da, 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 easy stuff. But I grabbed, at the last minute, I grabbed this Rachmaninoff piece I'd bought years ago that was way out of my league. And I knew it the first time I tried.
It was wishful thinking.
Yes. I'd heard it on a CD and I loved it. It's Rachmaninoff's Prelude number 5 in G minor. I think I got all that right. But it's such an excellent song. Anyway, but yeah, I'd bought it years before and I'd opened it and I tried to play one chord and I'm like, yep, that's never going to happen. So, but I grabbed it at the last minute and I took it with me to that first lesson. And she is a Russian teacher. So when she saw the Rachmaninoff, she was bored with everything else. She's like, okay, what next?
I don't care about Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Yeah. She goes, okay, that's nice. What next? And then my Rachmaninoff was way in the back because I kind of felt dumb bringing it. And I thought she was going to laugh at me. But she saw it and she goes, what's this one? And you have to imagine a cool Russian accent. What's this one? I'm like, oh boy. So I pulled it out and she didn't laugh at me. She got all excited and she goes, you want to play Rachmaninoff? I'm like, yeah. So she goes, let's do it. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Butterflies.
It's like excitement and fear all at the same time. But, needless to say, I took lessons a lot longer than 4 months. In fact, I still take lessons with Marina 8 years later.
Wow. How often do you do them?
I used to go every week, like a kid. But when I started working full time a couple years ago, I play in her Christmas recital, so I'll go from like October to December, and then I'll play in her spring recital, so I'll take lessons from like February to May. And then I don't take all year, but...
Did you play that Rachman, whatever it is, in one of your recitals?
Yes, I did.
Was she all excited?
I had to work on it for a year. But yes, I played it. And then 2 years later, we revisited it, and I worked on it for another year, and I performed it again. It's a fun song. It's a lot of notes. And the cool thing was, she said, when we started, she said, I was turning pages. I had to fuss with Paige. And she goes, by the time you're performing this, you won't even need the music.
Like you have it memorized?
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm like, I said, I've never been able to memorize music. And she goes, oh. She goes, you don't set out to memorize music. You just practice properly and it will be in your head. I'm like, all right. And I did.
Was it true?
Yes, absolutely. Because I didn't even bother trying to memorize. I just practiced. And I practiced that one a lot. And there's 6 pages in it. The 2 middle pages were really hard for me for some reason, so I didn't quite get them in my head. I had to look at the music, but the 4 pages, I didn't even need the music when I performed it a year later. It's just in your head.
So like if you went to go to the piano now, could you do pretty good at just playing it through without, even though it's been a while?
No, because I know. Why? Why not? Because I think in my very beginning ability, I learned it and I learned a lot and I improved on my technique a ton, but it was still almost too much music for me to hold in my hands. I don't know how to explain that because I could play through it for the most part for a few years, but I haven't played it for a long time and I could maybe get the first few notes. Where is it? Da, da. But I don't know. It was a lot of music to have in my hands.
Yeah, I agree. There was a lot of some jazz songs that were like that, here's my level, and they were just barely above it, but, you could figure it out. But if you weren't practicing some of the easy songs, you could practice every couple months that are just easy. But some of those, if you weren't, it dropped a lot quicker because to me, it was right above it. So it just had a hard time retaining that, like I said, that much information of what you're doing and all the different chords and everything. It was harder to hold on to.
I think if I went back to learn it again, it would come back very quickly. But I can't. It would take a bit. I think it'd come back, but I've thought about it though too. In fact, this year we're gonna work on another Rachmaninoff. So I like Rachmaninoff. He's cool.
All right. Well, that'd be my next question. Do you have a favorite composer or a certain style that you like more than others to play?
I've always loved classical. I don't know why I've just been drawn to it. And when I say classical, I'm a musical plebe. So I know I have learned since there's Baroque and there's classical and there's romantic.
There's all these different
I know.
things.
But I'm still kind of a plebe, so I just say it's all classical. Anything before, like, I don't know, 1940. Classical. Anyway, yeah, I really like classical. To play on the piano, I love ragtime.
I love ragtime too.
Love it.
I love typically your bass, just the low hand, just has a steady do 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 do, and then whatever else is doing.
Bump, bouncing around.
Yeah.
Oh, my left hand's terrible at bouncing around, but I work at it. Yeah, ragtime is super fun. And I finally got Marina because I've brought it up before. It'd be fun to do a ragtime, but somehow we always just end up back somewhere else with classical.
So perhaps she's like, oh, that's not good.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe she's like, sure, we could do that. But what about this? I don't know. But last year I played one. We learned one. It was fun. It was Maple Leaf Rag by Scott Joplin.
Why does that sound familiar? I think I have that one.
Like dun 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 dun.
I think did you guys used to play that one? I want to say because that sounds familiar. Something as a kid.
Mom used to play it.
Okay, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, I think they did a square dance to it or something to it. But as far as composers, no, I like them all. I mean, my exposure is, let's see, I've played some Schubert, Debussy, Mozart, obviously Rachmaninoff, Bach. Bach is fun to play. I don't know that it's as passionately dynamic as like Rachmaninoff, but it's such a fun finger play.
Like you don't feel the emotion in the music as much?
Not as much. Yeah, that's Baroque stuff. And I don't know how to describe it. It has a little more of a, I don't know.
It's more technical as opposed to
emotional.
More
of a formal. I mean, because like Handel's the same, and like Handel wrote the Messiah, and that's all scripture, and it can be very moving, but it still has more of a formal feel to it compared to like the Puccini stuff for the Rachmaninoff. Oh mio bambino, there's a little more the drooling emotion. I don't know.
Fair enough, I guess.
But they're all fun. They all have their qualities. I've liked playing everybody.
That's
Singing,
good.
though, when I sing, I really like Mozart. And I'm pretty good at Mozart. Like my type of voice is good at Mozart and Handel.
So now, just the keys that he plays in, how he writes the vocals, or just whatever?
Mozart's just always catchy. I don't know. Like some music, it takes a minute to figure out what is this melody. Like it takes a minute. But I feel with Mozart, you just get it right away. His melodies.
Like it makes sense?
Yeah, I don't have to try hard. I'm like, what is that? Play it again? Oh, okay, I think I got it now.
You jump to a flat sixth? What?
Yeah, so I like Mozart. He's just always catchy.
So here's a question. I mean, I don't know. Mostly a curiosity if it's the same in the piano world. So in the rock world, you got your punk bands and your metal bands and all this. Then you have classical guitar players. The most self-righteous, arrogant, look down on everybody typically are those classical people. Anything is just beneath them. And, I mean, you don't play this half diminished third. They're just some of the most condescending. I mean, they're jerks. Is that kind of the same in the singing piano realm, or that's where a lot of people are anyway? So you don't really see it as much.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm just thinking of my experience, and I look at people like Billy Joel, and I'm like, that guy's killing the piano, man. I don't know who'd look down on him. I guess his dad, is a conductor of classical music. I thought
maybe
I
he
heard
was
that.
shunned.
Maybe. I'm like, what does his dad think of that? I'm not enough of a academic virtuoso to look down on anybody, but I have. Some people, you're just like, snobs, music snobs.
For sure.
Yeah.
We watched a documentary on Billy Joel, and he was cutthroat with his musicians.
Ooh.
I mean, he was, yeah. I don't remember the guy's name. So he was his drummer. I think he started at the beginning of his career. He was his drummer. And I don't remember, whatever. I think during the 70s and all that, of course, they were all on drugs and who knows what. And I want to say Billy Joel stopped, but this guy kind of still did. But, he was still his drummer for years. And at some point, I want to say it was in the 90s, Billy Joel just said, "You're done. See ya." So this dude had been his drummer for years, going on all his tours, his albums, and just one day, "You're done. We don't want you anymore." But yeah, there was a lot of stories, like his guitar players and his bass players, just real cutthroat.
Wow.
I mean, I guess that the type of business you're in, you got to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't have survived.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have.
Yeah. You hear horror stories.
Well, I guess, who knows? I guess if it's your name on the line.
Yeah, and I think that's another big thing. Like you look at Metallica, some people just know the name Metallica but don't know who the people are.
Yeah.
When you're someone like Michael Jackson, Billy Joel, I mean, that's you.
Yeah.
Your name is your brand and everything. So I guess you can't just be letting people get away with stuff.
I guess maybe it was getting old and slow or something.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I was going to say a lot of Billy Joel's music kind of slow and old, but sounds quick. So
Yeah.
He's got some good ones. I'm not going to lie. I've got one of his albums.
Well, even like you mentioned Bon Jovi. I mean, they're obviously very good musicians. They have to know their chords. I mean, you might think, oh, it's a rock band, but they have to be very accomplished musicians.
Not so much. Have you heard Foo Fighters?
I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah, so Dave Grohl, he's their singer, guitar player. He used to be the drummer for Nirvana. Yeah, but you'll watch videos of this dude. He'll just play a chord. He goes, "You know what chord this is?" Because I don't. It just sounds good.
Okay.
So he has no...
He doesn't have the academic
Not
names,
at all.
but he's got a sense for it.
Yeah, I mean, they have good songs. And so there's one that he talked about that he's like, okay, well, since I was a drummer, I play my low notes. That's my bass drum on the guitar. So those are typically, I'll mimic the bass drum. And then the higher notes, that's the snare. So I usually put the higher notes on where I think a snare would go. And that's how he wrote a bunch of his songs. Is he didn't know what any chord, he didn't know keys, he didn't know nothing. I don't know, maybe he knows stuff on the fretboard, but that sounds good. And that's how he wrote some of the songs.
There you go. Had no doubts. That sounds good. Let's go with it. It is interesting how, because I've taken voice lessons for years from a lady named Marta, and she had a student through the university. She taught privately and through the university. Anyway, she had a girl come to her at the university, and she would always sing these amazing arias from the operas with all the high notes. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And it sounded effortless. She'd be going to high notes. And you know what? Some professional singers don't sound great on their high notes. It strains. You're like, oh.
Like you could tell they're having a hard time with those.
Well, or I don't know. They're just their technique. I don't know. But there's some professionals. I'm like, I don't really like their high notes. But this girl, it sounded like butter. It was so smooth. It was so beautiful. And I complimented Marta after a recital once. I was like, oh my gosh, tell me she's going to go audition for the Met or something. And she goes, she can't read a lick of music. She goes, our lessons are painstaking.
So she has to, all right, you're playing this note. She has to play it for so she can hear it and sing it.
She can't hear it. So they spend so much time just teaching her the melody of each song. And I'm like, that's crazy. Oh, the voice, man. Anyway, it was a really pretty voice. I loved it. Don't know where she went. I think she went off to school somewhere, but anyway, it's kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, then another one is Metallica, Kurt Hammett. I mean, he's good. He's got those face-melting solos on his guitar, and then eventually went to go to school to actually learn how to play. He didn't really know beforehand, and, well, let's go learn. I've heard a lot of people like that's what they did. They didn't know what, I don't know, I guess you could get into just musically talented.
Yeah.
You could just figure that stuff out. Like I know some guitar players would just sit in their rooms and just learn solos, one note at a time. Bing, hit rewind. Bing, or refine the tab. And that's how they learned to do these super awesome solos. They just figured them out as they went. Have no musical training, no whatever. They're just...
Well, who am I to judge? I mean, you're making big money doing that. I'm like, dang. And I think my problem in regards to music has always been I doubt too much.
Yeah.
And that just holds you back. So these people who, well, I don't know what this chord is, but sure sounds good. They just go for it. Woohoo!
Let's roll.
Like, man, like doubt and insecurity, that'll hold you back.
Oh, those are big ones. Well, there's a lot there because, I mean, it's not, because you're putting something that you think, typically I've noticed when you write a song or you're putting something together, you have a passion for it. You have your heart's in it, your soul's in it. And now you're putting in front of somebody. There's a big fear of being oh, that's stupid. And that hurts. So there
Yeah.
is that fear of, well, is it going to be shot down? Are people going to think it's stupid? Or when you hear somebody, you're like, well, it's nowhere near to this level. So maybe I just need to keep it because it's not good.
I think my problem is particularly with singing. Piano, I just like piano, I'll play. But singing, I don't know. Because I resumed singing. Because you remember, Mom had me doing solos. I'm like, enough with that. But I think it always stuck with me. I've always felt embarrassed singing solos. Like, oh my gosh, what is this? But
Okay, so here's another break of another one where we're going to insert one of Becky's musical performance, and I'll let her introduce this one as well.
this one is Andrew Lloyd Webber's Pieyesu. And I'm singing it with my voice teacher's daughter, who has a luscious voice. And this one was hard. I was really nervous because I think I may have mentioned that my nerves were just like 5 times, like multiple times worse than they ever were after all that shutdown stuff. But I was really struggling with my high notes too in practice. And we even talked about changing parts, but then I had a cold, so I couldn't get the low notes very well. So I'm like, well, we just got to make it work, man. So anyways, it's really pretty, and it was really fun singing with Elise.
All right, here we go.
I don't know why I keep trying. But at some point, my early adulthood, because see, I got a scholarship by some weird twist of fate out of high school in vocal pedagogy.
And what is that? Vocal pedagogy?
Singing.
Oh,
just singing, fancy singing term.
That's Pinky's out.
Can't just say, I'm getting a degree in singing. We got to make it cool. Vocal pedagogy. Anyway.
With a British accent.
Anyway, so I got a scholarship, and I think that surprised Mom and Dad.
They're like, whoa, 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 whoa.
They're like, someone's paying, you're studying music. We weren't rich, and I was going to go to Los Angeles and be a fashion designer, but I had no plan for how I was paying for that. You know what I mean? Just wide-eyed and la. But anyways, I'm like, well, that was cool. I was flattered that I sang good enough for someone to pay for school. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And I took it for 2 years, took music theory. And then and I did the solos, the recitals I was obligated to do, took the lessons. I could never shake that super nervous feeling every time I had to sing a solo. And then just feeling embarrassed when I was done. I could not shake it. So I blew music off again, went back to art. Didn't actually graduate in art either. Some years later, the first voice teacher I'd ever had gave me a tape of a lady named Kathleen Battle. Now, the thing is, when I got to college, I'm learning like German, songs in German and Italian, and I remember thinking, why?
You're like, I ain't German.
I didn't get the opera. Oh, Mom would be ashamed. Mom knew the names of opera singers, and somehow I grew up and thought opera was something obscure people do in dark corners. So I go on...
Weirdos.
Yeah. Like learning Wiedmund, German and Italian. I'm like, okay, I guess it's cool, but why? Why? I didn't get it. So that was another thing at school. I'm like, I can't sing solos. I feel embarrassed, and I don't know why I'm singing in all these weird languages. So anyways, whatever. But I had this one tape that my first voice teacher had given me of Kathleen Battle, and she's a renowned opera singer. But this tape was all Handel's music. Most of it was in English. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 Italian ones, but I would just keep listening to it over the years, and it grew on me. I thought I really liked the classical singing. So that was growing on me. And then one day, Joanna and I are driving along in the car, and she goes, Becky, let me play my new CD for you. She pulls it out, and it's called The A to Z of Opera. I'm like, opera? I'm like, what?
How dare you, Joanna?
Like, people, what? And she goes, okay. So she puts it in, and she goes to her favorite one. Let me play my favorite one, like number 10, CD 1. And it was Mozart. It was the aria of the Queen of the Night from his opera, The Magic Flute. Well, if you're going to dabble in opera, this is like a quintessential. It's super fun. It's like a little rock and roll song. I don't know. Some classical is just like rock and roll to me. I don't know. So she played that, and I loved it. I fell in love with it. I'm like, oh my gosh. And Joanna listens to opera? And all these people sing opera?
What else don't I know about you?
Yeah. It's like I had an awakening. I'm like,
do you have a bat cave too?
It just occurred to me that, wow, people actually do this. Anyway, so that was another little moment. And I thought, why should I be afraid of singing? I'm going to beat it. That's what I told myself. I'm going to beat it. So I found a voice teacher, and that's been my quest for the last almost 20 years now. It's like, someday I'm going to stand up, sing a solo, and not be nervous. It hasn't happened yet.
I was going to say, has it gone down a little bit maybe?
I've gotten better. I got a lot better at managing it.
So it's still there.
It's still there. Yes, I got a lot better at managing it. And of course, my technique improved. So that helped. And I found it was better if I practiced a lot. And I had to practice in different ways. Like I would learn the music and try to apply all the technique at home. But then I also had to pay, anytime I have a recital, I'll pay an accompanist to sing with me for like 30 minutes once a week for like a month.
So what is that? So they come and play while you sing whatever it is.
Yeah. And I'll just give them the music, and I'll just, because it lets me practice singing as I will sing at a recital.
So you're not playing and singing
I'm not playing and tinkering and stopping every time I want to fix something. I have to sing it all the way through, because that was a problem. I would never do that. And then I'd get to a recital and have to sing all the way through and not stop when I made a mistake. And that made my nerves even worse. So I'm like, you got to practice singing like you're in a recital. And you go all the way through, and you have your poise, and you're not holding your book. Anyway, so that helped a lot too.
So is that how recitals work? Is you're singing, you're not holding your music. Whatever it is you're singing, you just know.
It depends. I think if you really want to be professional, you don't have your music. Although I've seen some people who have music in front of them.
Okay, so you're not like shunned.
No.
Oh, he has music.
Mart, my voice teacher, she always wants me to learn it. I don't practice so much anymore since I started working full time. So it's harder to memorize them. But some stuff, though, like if it's an oratorio like the Messiah, I guess it's customary that you will hold your book.
Okay, so I guess it then also depends on what you're singing.
Yeah. But I'm not singing anywhere big. So if I have to hold my music,
Pinky's
it's fine. It's fine. But she always encourages us to get it memorized, and most of her students will have their music memorized.
So let's back things up a little bit. When you went to school, what did you like about when you were in school for singing, or what didn't you like about being in school for singing?
I really liked the music theory. It was hard. It's kind of like math, but I liked it because I just like learning things and it's cool.
Yeah.
I liked choir. Choir was fun. And I liked learning how to sing, but like I said, it really came down to my nerves.
When you were singing in the choir, did you still have those nerves when you were in a group?
No.
So that's gone. But it's just when it's you.
Just when I'm a soloist, yes, and you have to stand up there,
It's
and people
you,
are
all
looking
in
at you. Yes. Weirdly enough, though, I sang in the Messiah for the first time, like 6 or 7 years ago, and I soloed. I sang "Rejoice Greatly," which I do very well, actually. I like that song. It's a good one. But anyway, this little group that put this on, they would actually have a little symphony up there. They just did it at the church, and they'd pull out the first 4 or 5 pews, and they'd put up like a whole symphony. They had drums. They even had a harpsichord. They had violin section. And I'm like, that's cool. I'm never going to sing anything like that, except that this little group puts that on. I'll never sing with an orchestra. But anyway, so I was very nervous in the leading up to this. But when I stood up, and you've sung a few choir numbers, and you have this choir behind you, and the room was huge. It was huge, and it was full. And I stood up to sing, and I was less nervous then with all that energy I feel. And then the little symphony starts going, all the instruments. I found it weird that I was the least nervous singing in that context then.
Then you
in
just,
the tiny
you just
little,
walk up by yourself, stand there, play, and then walk away.
Yes, small audiences or small rooms make me very nervous. I realize now, but this big room with the choir and the symphony, I'm like, this is kind of cool.
And just the whole feel of everything in the room.
Everything. I don't know. It's like the energy or something, but I still get nervous, but not as bad. That's very
good.
fun. That's fun to do.
So here's our fourth break. This one it's a little tough to hear. Rebecca plays with, there's a flute and a violin and a piano. So just so you know, it's sometimes the vocals get a little lost in there, but I'll let her introduce this one.
This one is by Bach. It's called "Sheep May Safely Graze," and my voice teacher's 2 children were with me. I love singing ensembles. I love making music with other people, voices or instruments. I love it to death. So it's fun. He's a professional flutist, and her daughter also plays the violin. Anyway, so we did this together, and it is kind of hard to hear me. This was the same recital, so I was struggling with this one too after all that COVID stuff, but it's one of my favorite Bach. It's just beautiful.
So just as a question now to think about it, are you a little bit more comfortable playing on an ensemble? You're still playing it solo, so you're the only singer, but you do have a piano, you've got a violinist and a flute. Does that change the dynamics of overcoming a little bit more fear, or is it just still there?
Usually, yeah. Usually if I'm with an ensemble of some kind, the nerves aren't quite as bad. But this one, yeah, this recital was rough. I remember it was rough, but.
All right, well, here we go. So what did you like about learning music theory?
I just like learning, and I like the academic of it, and how things. I like to understand things.
Like what you're doing and why you're
Yeah.
doing things?
Yeah, all this knowledge. You're like, wow, that's cool. Like scales. And I can't, Phrygian. This is a fragment still floating around in my brain. But scales where you'll start on one note and you'll go, okay, this is a Phrygian scale. Like, oh, cool. Or like the intervals. You know, we did a lot of ear training. So this is a fifth, this is a fourth, this is an augmented fifth. Because they're training you to recognize those intervals when you hear them.
Do you think you could do pretty good with that right now?
Yeah. Because we associated a song with each one.
Oh, kind of like the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la.
I think my bonnie lies over, that's a sixth.
Okay.
My bonnie, and then ba-dump went the little green frog one day. I think that was a fourth.
Okay, so you associate with songs that have whatever.
Mm-hmm, with that interval.
Okay.
I could maybe get most of them. Do, mi, so, mi, do. It'd be rusty though. Don't test me.
So when you have, okay, you've got your music theory knowledge. Some of that stuff just does not apply though when you play classical stuff. It does in general, but then some you're like, no, you're playing all these sharps and flat in the key of C. It doesn't fit here. So, that's why one thing I always seen a lot of that. Because I always thought about music theory. It's I just forgot the movie, with the pirates in Jack Sparrow.
Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yeah. And whatever the one guy is, because she keeps going on about, you have to follow the guidelines, you have to follow the rules. And he goes, the rules are more like guidelines than actual rules.
The pirate code.
Yeah.
They're more like guidelines.
But that's the way I've always thought about music theory. It's nice, but it's not really a set rule. Just do whatever you feel like. Here's some structure to help you.
Yeah.
But who cares if you want to play whatever? You want to mix an E and a C flat and who knows what? Who cares? Put whatever you want in there.
Yeah. I think you don't need to know all the academics of music to be able to make good music.
Well, wasn't Beethoven deaf?
Yeah.
So,
but I don't know a lot about Beethoven. He probably had music training.
Yeah, but
I can imagine he would be like, I know exactly what that sounds like, just from how he writes it out,
Because a lot of it's math. Okay, here's a one, and like you were saying, okay. I don't know. That just to me is amazing. He was deaf, and he makes these complex sounding, and they sound good. If you just plug my ears and plunked out something, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't sound good.
I think if you can hear music, yeah, you don't have to know the theory. That's academics. But like the one guitar player is, hey, this is a good sound. Let's do this. Hey, this is a good sound.
Yeah, they made millions of bucks off it. Yeah.
There you go. And I've learned to play some complicated stuff on the piano. Not saying there isn't still much to polish, but I still don't know a lot of what the notation is on the music. I know what the notes are. I know what PP is and
piano.
FF. I play at one volume though. She'll say, that is very hard. I appreciate when I listen to a real pro and they're getting these, you still hear every note clear as day, but these are soft and these are big. I don't know. But this is me in piano lessons. Okay, Rebecca, this is pianissimo. It's a different touch. I'm like, okay. She goes, so I don't know. She always had to tell me to relax because I was always tense in my shoulders and my arms. Okay, relax. And then we're trying to learn pianissimo. And so I go, ee. So I tense up and I try to play quiet. She goes, no, now you're all tensed up. Relax. I'm like, okay. So I try to play again. Bonk. Forte. I couldn't get it. And I was learning a nocturne by Chopin one year, and I thought, I had made so much progress with my pianissimos and my fortes. And then I recorded myself. I'm like, nope. It all sounds like one volume. Anyways, that's hard, but there's little notations on music. I don't know what it is. I just listen to the teacher and play. Practice, play.
If it works, it works. Who cares?
If it sounds pretty, oh.
How often do you go out and sing at places or do your solos or anything or with a choir?
It depends on the year, actually. This December, I had 4 solos. So I soloed in the Messiah, and then I sang a duet. I was a duet at church. And then my voice teacher has recitals 3 times a year. And she also does master classes 3 times a year, which they're kind of like a recital.
Like it's just one big recital?
No, it's a class. So all of her students come together. Everybody takes their turn getting up and singing. And she stops and she like does a lesson in front of the class on you.
You see how she did not extend that note?
Yes. Now you're flat. Now let's try this. You need to breathe better. Do this. And it's a little bit awkward sometimes. She's always on me to get more acting in, and I'm terrible at acting.
What do you mean? Like more dynamic?
Like I've done some Broadway tunes now and then, and those lend themselves more to movement, and I hate it. I don't want to act.
So acting and singing at the same time?
Yes.
Because you did that in high school. Like you were part of the play, right?
I stunk at it. But yeah, I did it in high school, but I don't know that I was a great actress really, but I don't know. All I know is I really like singing in the Messiah. I stand in one place, I hold my book, I sing, I sit down.
You don't have to do some jiggy moves while you're singing?
I don't got to figure out that I step here, step there, facial, I don't got to figure that out. But this last recital, I sang a piece by Mozart. It's called Batti Batti. It's from an opera. Some girl, anyways, she's trying to convince her boyfriend, her lover, to take her back, I guess. So it's a very pleading song. And I just want to sing it Messiah style.
Just let the whole thing go all at once and same volume and everything.
And Marge is like, no, this is what's going on. You got to act like you care. Oh. And the whole master class and everybody's watching. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to try and do this. So she's so I tried and I feel hammy and silly, but she goes, that was great. And I'm like, oh geez, I don't ever want to sing like that. But that's a master class. You got to be corrected in front of all. And
I mean, is she again. At least, she like, I don't want to say respectful, but she's good at her correcting. She's not like,
oh yeah,
demoralize you. Now you're like, oh, dang it.
No, she's very good. In fact, what's useful about a master class is I can sit and watch her teach someone else, and I can hear the difference. When I can't always hear it when it's me. It's a different experience to watch somebody sing, and she goes, okay, now you need to do this. And you're like, holy crap, that was a huge difference. That sounded so much better. And then you understand when I do it, what the difference is, because I won't always hear it, because I'm not outside myself.
Yeah. So how often, or how many are in the class when you do those masters?
She's had... over the years, lots of students. Sometimes not everyone can come, but she will 8.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's not like 30 more. In there.
No, her studio is not that huge, but maybe 8 kids at a time, maybe 12 at the most. She's had at a master class. And actually when she's had a lot of students, she'll do 2 separate ones. So they're not long.
And now are the other students in there, are they good as working with each other to try and help? Or is it just you're
watch.
Up there singing, you just sit there and be quiet?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Don't talk to me.
And nobody wants to go next.
Is that where everybody takes a step back and hope someone forgot?
Yeah. All right, who's next? I'm like, all right, I'll just go. And it makes me laugh. Because I'm a grown-up, and most of her students are fairly young. Like, what are you worried about? I'll still get so flippin' nervous, though. Like, this last recital was the worst. Actually, my nerves have been really bad since all that COVID shut down. Oh, they're like 10 times worse than they ever were. But I'm like, what is the logic here? There's no logic. No one's going to kill you. No one's going to lock you in a coffin and bury you.
No one's going to beat you up in the back alley for... Really singing an A flat instead of an A.
Just going to go up and sing and everyone will think it's awesome. And even if you mess up, no one will care. Because I've heard people mess up and I don't care. Yeah. I mean, it's usually so inconsequential when you notice a little flub somewhere. Because most people sing really well and they do a good job. That little flub was like, meh. You don't even care. But I think I make a tiny flub and the world's going to come down on me and I'll go home. Oh my gosh, I suck. I just got to quit singing.
Well, I don't say that. I guess that was one of the things when I started playing with Joel. I mean, we just didn't care. Now, keep in mind, half the time they were high as a kite, so I don't think they cared about anything. But But there was definitely I remember at first when I first started playing, when I played in the band in eighth grade, I mean, yeah, you're just like, and you're super stiff. I remember we played the first whatever concert, and you're just, then they opened up the cafeteria there at James Monroe, and you're just, like you're saying, you're just stiff as all can be, just trying to read the music perfect.
Yeah.
But then we started playing with Joel. I was like, who cares? Because there were some people that when they would have band practice, I mean, no one else was allowed in the room. And we're going to practice this, and it's going to be tight, and we're going to do good. Well, because Joel, they were big time weed smokers. There was always 5, 6, 7 people over every time we had practice. So it just kind of got to, eventually didn't even care. Like you're saying, that's one thing I'd noticed. Anytime I made a mistake, no one ever, at any show that I've ever been in, except for maybe one of the other musicians in the band, has ever been like, yeah, you played the wrong beat there. Or you hit the tom up here instead of this one, or you missed. Half the time they don't even know.
Most people don't know.
Well, I talked with the girl in high school. We were talking about Primus. And I was like, yeah, I really like the drums. Oh, I didn't even know there were drums on those songs. I'm like, what is wrong with you idiots? So, yeah, I think people just, they don't even know. But it's easy to get in your own mind and tear yourself up about it.
Yes. Oh, brother, and I do. And I think I have to be perfect. I think somewhere in my head, I've listened to a lot of CDs and thought, if I don't sound like that, it's not even worth getting up and singing, which is completely wrong. It's completely wrong. And like I said, some people recorded on those CDs. I'm like, I don't like their high notes. I think mine are better. But anyways, whatever. This was a funny moment because I've taken voice lessons for the better part of 20 years, classical voice lessons. So, I mean, I've achieved a certain technique. I think I imagine I sing pretty well. I'm a nervous singer, but I think I sound pretty good. Certainly compared to other people sometimes. So I went to try out for the Messiah because even though I've soloed for them before, they still have everybody try out. So I tried out, and some other girls and some other women tried out, some other girls, and I'm like, oh, they're not very good. I think it. I'm like, oh, they're pitchy. You can just tell they probably don't have much experience singing solos. And somebody else was just, their vibrato was just so wildly out of control. I'm like, oh. And I imagine.
You got some reverb on that?
Yeah, anyways. So my 2 daughters were with me, though. They'd come with me. And my older daughter tried out, too. And she's got a really clear voice. Now, she's not experienced singing solos. She hasn't been doing it. But it's all on pitch. And it just has this really clear ring. I'm like, man, hers was nice. Anyway, whatever. So we're talking about it on the way home, me and Jess. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I thought you sounded better than some of those other girls that tried out. And Megan goes, I thought you all sounded the same. She goes, everyone sounds really great. I'm like, and I thought to myself, you think I sound the same as those people?
Dang it. No soup for you.
What do you hear? Unplug your ears. But what do I know? It's like 10 in the morning. We're trying to sing these tryouts. Maybe I sound terrible too. I don't know. But I thought, if I still sound like that after all these voice lessons, that's it. I just hope I don't. Scott says I don't. He says my voice is really smooth. It's all connected. I'm like, okay, good.
Anyway. That's one thing I've definitely found. It's easy to do as a musician is to nitpick other musicians.
Oh, yeah,
but
for sure.
What I've always found is, I mean, and there's been some good musicians that I've seen live. They're just amazing. Like there was a guy that he played in it was a blues jazz band, and he was older up there at Utah State, and he played bass, and he did a lot of slap and popping, which is, you're using your thumb and your one of your fingers. Well, the dude didn't have a thumb, so he was just using his fingers, and it was just so amazing to hear this. But yet, sometimes it's easy that you could be like, oh, I see what you're playing there. You're just playing a basic scale. That sounds dumb. It's real easy to do it, but what I've noticed is the ones that just don't care, kind of like the Dave Grohls. They're like, you know what? I like it. I'm going to play it. I don't care if it's easy. I don't care if it's complex, whatever. Those are the more fun ones to watch because they typically have more energy. Their shows are more exciting. Whatever they're doing is more because they have their emotion in it. It's not, okay, I have to be super technical and that has its place. But these are the ones that are like, whatever. And then I don't find like those ones. I don't find myself really judging them. Like we were talking when I talked with him, he started playing in a band called the Maxis, and they had this one guitar player. I remember we were watching him play one time, and he just did a backflip.
Wow.
And you're like, the song never changed. Like nothing. I mean, it didn't sound any different. While this dude just stops and does a backflip and then starts playing guitar again. Then when talking with Dave, he's like, "Yeah, it turns out that dude was never even plugged in. He didn't play anything." But he was a spaz and he got the crowd going. But yeah, we didn't know. I mean, you're just like, wow, that dude just did a backflip. And then turns out that dude wasn't even playing. It wasn't even plugged in. But they didn't care. They were just there having fun, doing whatever.
I remember hearing someone say people will remember the emotion before they remember the logic of something. Yeah. And if I apply that to music, I know my voice teacher said, I can't remember, something like people will appreciate the performance more if you feel it. But if you sit there and you're singing anal because you're worried about every note being exactly perfect, she goes, that's not an enjoyable performance.
Yeah, I agree with that.
She goes, it's better if it's not perfect, but there was feeling in it and you were having fun doing it. That's what people will get into. That's a hard thing for me to let go of because I still think I'm trying to be perfect because I'm afraid if I screw up, but la la la.
Well,
but it's true. I think we gravitate to people who look like they're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Or they're confident. You gravitate towards that.
Well, that's why I like giving talks, like in church, because I don't care. And that's when you hear people talk, they just get up there. And the Lord said to Moses, okay, and this is, I mean, it's just, I mean, I understand they're nervous. I understand it, but you're just like, okay. But yeah, when you have those ones where you can tell whatever it is they're talking about, they have emotion. They have feelings. They're not just regurgitating whatever they're supposed to say in this one thing, but they have experience. They have emotions with it. There's stories with it. And like our old bishop, I mean, he always had some of the funniest stories whenever he would give talks.
Stories are good.
Like I remember one that he shared was when they first moved to California, him and his wife, they went to a Mexican restaurant. And he's like, yeah, we got this stuff, this red sauce that came with it. And I didn't know what it was. And it was so amazing. And so he decided that he was going to try and figure out how to make what was salsa, but he didn't know what it was at the time. And so he could just never get it right. But he figured all of it out except for one ingredient. And then after years and years, it turned out that it was cilantro. So he tells this big old story about trying to figure out how to make salsa, and he couldn't figure out the one ingredient. And anyway, but it's just funny because, I mean, I don't know, to me, like especially in that, when in music or when people are talking, there's an attachment to it. When there's something to attach to rather than just, I'm up here reading reads. I mean, I understand it's nervous. I understand that, but yeah, I agree with that. Okay, here's our last little break in our conversation to insert some of Becky's singing. So you can go ahead and introduce this one.
All right, this one, same recital. This is Batti Batti by Mozart. Fun song. This is the one that my voice teacher constantly trying to get me to act, and I just like, oh my gosh. But anyways, it's a fun song. I really like Mozart. I think it's a beast to play. So I felt for the accompanist too, kind of got this, struggled with this a little bit, but I'm still impressed with what they do.
All right, well, here we go.
when I went to school, I graduated in communications, and I took 2 public speaking classes, and we took some marketing, and I just learned that when we're presenting something, it's not about me. It's about your audience. So if I'm going to give a talk, I can't talk the way I want to talk. I have to talk in a way that the audience wants to listen. That's how, when we put advertising campaigns together, they have to, well, what are people going to look at? What are going to people keep reading? You know what I mean? They're very focused on the audience. So I've thought in recent years when I have a solo, sometimes like in my recitals, I'm just nervous. But when I sang in the Messiah, this year, I sang one of the tenor solos because they didn't have a lot of guys. And it's called, oh boy, it's the Messiah. So it's all scripture-y, you know. Every valley shall be exalted. Whoa. What are those words? Like, I'm like, who relates to that? It's Bible stuff. So I was sitting here thinking, what's the relatable bit about this song? So I was thinking through it, and I'm like, well, it's not the words. It's not the words. It had to be about the music, the musicality of the song, because it's got moving runs, and it's got
very
cool
upbeat
stuff. Yeah, it is. I don't know. I like it. I don't know how to describe it all, but there's one part, I mean, it's moving, da, 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 and it's got those typical melismas where the notes you just run a whole bunch of eighth notes, you know, like Messiah is famous for. But then there's this one part in the song, it's my favorite part. After you sing a page, da, 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 short phrases and melismas, and then all of a sudden, I hold this note for like 6 bars while the orchestra is doing something, da, 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 this pulsing. That's my favorite part of the whole song. I'm like, it feels like I'm, skydiving or something, just like, and I said, well, that's what it has to be then. It says the words are strange because it's Bible talk.
Like Old Testament talk.
Said, so I have to somehow sing this song musically that it's fun so that the audience feels like, at least when I get to that part, they feel that note, that sensation of whatever, skydiving, like with that that pulse of the orchestra. I love it. So whether I achieved that, I don't always know, but I always think what is relatable to the audience, because if it's just me showing off, that's a sad show. That's a sad show. You better make it relatable to the audience, man.
But when you play your solos, or when you do these solos, do you pick what you want to sing in these? Or it needs to be in a certain, it needs to be out of this kind of genre or whatever, or you can do whatever you want?
In my voice lessons, I could pick pretty much whatever. I think Marta...
She'd be annoyed, but she'd at least...
No, she'd teach me whatever I wanted, but I always get around some classical or maybe some Broadway. But when I do competitions, I have done some competitions in the past, they have rules, and they'll have a Broadway division and they'll have a classical division. I've done both, but mostly I do the classical one. They'll say you have to have 3 pieces, you have to have 3 different eras of music, and you have to have at least 1 in English. So
you could do them all in English.
Well, no, and there's not.
So you have to do something in another language.
That's a good question. I don't think they all have to be. There's just not a lot of great classical repertoire in English. There's a ton of Italian and German. So I think they bank that you're not showing up with 3 English pieces. They'd all be from the Messiah.
But at least one has to be.
Yeah, but at least one has to be in English. But anyway, when I try out for the Messiah, they tell me what I sing.
They say, we want you. And now is it typically a song from the Messiah?
Yeah, I'll always sing something from the Messiah to audition. And then sometimes they give me that one I auditioned in. Sometimes they say, we want you to sing this one. I'm like, all right.
So when you do your competitions, do you start seeing a lot of people singing the same songs? Like you don't see a large repertoire of people singing all kinds of stuff. There's usually the same songs being sung a lot. Well,
if you imagine a whole bunch of amateurs coming together for like a guitar or a drumming, there'd be certain songs that come up a lot, probably, I imagine. There's always some favorites. So yeah, I don't know what they all would be, but yeah, I'm sure those people who judge those are like, all right.
Dang it.
16th time I've heard this one today.
Someone pick a new song, please.
I love my teacher is from Venezuela, so she's familiar with Spanish repertoire, and I guess there's not a ton, but I have four numbers that I've sung a few times over because they're not super common.
So
I like singing them.
When they are, is it just the language is different, or just the overall feel of the music is different? Is it very Spanish influenced, or is it still classical music? It's just in a different language.
I don't think it's a set. And like I said, I'm still a musical plebe in a lot of ways. But there's arias, that's something from an opera. And then sometimes there's just sets. Like Schubert did sets. And this little Spanish, it was 4 songs, they were a set. So you sing them together. You don't always. I often solo with just one of them, but they come as set. They'll be in the same little booklet, and you sing them together. Cycles, I think cycles, Marta calls them cycles. I have a book of Schubert's cycles. So it's not a song from an opera. They're just art songs, but they're like grouped together, I guess, in cycles. Yeah. I barely understand what all that is. I just sing.
I just go with it.
I'm like, I like this one. Let's sing.
So let's just say, I mean, I don't know your kids are older, but let's just say a little kid comes up to you, maybe a high schooler, and says that they heard you singing, they want to do singing. They want to go for school and singing or something like that. What would be your recommendations that they do, or how do they go about doing that? Would you say, give it up and go?
Yeah, sing. Get a good teacher and sing.
Would you recommend, hey, go to school, don't go to school, it doesn't matter. If you will get a good singer and you're still practicing, then don't go to school? Or wouldn't matter?
Wow, I don't even know if I know enough I would advise anyone. I mean, because some people, they can get big and be awesome and they didn't go to school. Yeah. And then you can go to school and end up teaching junior high choir, you know what I mean? Not that that's an insult, but I think if you go get a music degree with the hopes of being this great soloist, that might be I think that's hard to break into. I don't know. And I don't even think I wonder if you were like this awesome opera singer and you didn't have a degree, if like the Met would let you in. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe like that's one, like, for example, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. I mean, they're all amazing singers. I wonder how many of those are just good singers. Or do all those guys have degrees? I don't know. I've always wondered that.
I understand that it used to be easier to get into the Mormon Tabernacle Choir than it is now, because they actually make you take like a theory test.
Okay, so
that's what I heard.
There is some kind of training. You're not just, okay, you're good, get in.
You have to sing,
you can hold a note.
And then I think you have to prove you can sight read. And then you take some kind of written test.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I guess they're serious.
Yeah, I guess they're serious. Like, well.
Who'd ever thought that?
They weren't my chances.
Well, I mean, I don't want to bash on school, but like I know recording. I know so many people that have recording degrees that went and got their fancy recording degrees from all these fancy schools. And I don't know any of them that actually have a job recording. They're all doing, engineering or working at Walmart or who knows what.
I think music's hard to get into as a profession.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why I brought up, teaching band or choir at junior high. That's a job you can get.
Yeah.
I think breaking into like a solo career or something, I could think that's a lot harder.
Well, I mean, I think it's, and I just think of it in the band realm. I mean, for example, guitar players. I mean, you know how many guitar players are out there? I mean, there's so many of them. So it's difficult. But now, if you're a bass player, you could be almost a doo-dooest bass player in the world, but you can at least play along. You almost can have a pick whatever you want. Same thing with drummers. If you're fairly good, or even, you can hold a beat. But when it gets into actually going anywhere, there's a lot of luck. Because, we've met a lot that they're amazing, just amazing musicians, but they're just playing at Bob's Bar on Friday night making $100. But then you've met some, they're like, man, you are doo-doo. You are not good and your music's garbage, but for some reason everybody likes it. And they're playing all these big shows everywhere. So there's a lot of luck involved when it comes to music.
I could see that. I think it's very competitive.
Yeah. Well, and I think that personally, I think that's the same way with the Beatles. I think the Beatles are doo-doo. They're garbage. But some of their songs are, they're easy and they're catchy. I mean, some are more complicated, but some are just easy, catchy songs that are easy to sing along with.
It is what it is. And I've never, there was a while that I thought I'd go back and finish my music degree, but I always hesitated because of my nerves. I just doubted myself too much. And because I thought, even if I go graduate, then what? Because I thought, I recognized you can't just, you're not just going to suddenly go get a job as a famous opera singer somewhere.
Yeah.
Like I recognized that I'm not done once that's just not an easy road. And that particular type, you might travel a lot if you wanted to get in, break onto the opera singing for sure. So I kind of abandoned that. So I'm not trying to influence large parts of the world with my music. I'm just trying to edify and challenge myself, and it's been good.
Well, that's good. I think that's the fun of music. Remember, Julie and I went down to Hollywood, down to recording school down there. We took a tour, and one of my old roommates, he has an uncle. He was at a studio down in Burbank. So I called him up and just, hey, here's what we were thinking about doing. And he goes, I don't remember exactly what he said, but to paraphrase, he basically was like, you can go get your degree and or have your certificate. And he says, you might be lucky if you get a job at a studio at all. And if you do get that job, you'll probably be the coffee boy. Just going to get people's coffee because you have no experience. Yeah, you've got a degree, but you have no experience working in a studio, and they're not going to let you touch anything until you get it. So now he says you might just have an expensive piece of paper said that you did some stuff, but it's not going to do you any good. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I feel about music. It's like getting a music degree, because I've thought about that. But one, they don't have music degrees that you could do at home, I've noticed. Maybe they do now because of COVID, I don't know. But then what? Like you said, now you've got your paper. Am I going to be any different now without it, with, music knowledge? Mm-hmm. Or now I have a piece of paper with maybe a little bit more music knowledge, but now what? What am I going to do with it? What's the paper going to do?
I know. And I feel like colleges just decide, let's offer this degree. Charge a bunch of money. But it's not. So, yeah. And then somebody's got a truckload of student loans and an degree that nobody gives a crap about. I have a degree in movie making. So,
okay.
Yeah, somebody we know got a degree in that, and he can't get a job.
That's a weird degree.
Yeah. I mean, and you'd think with social media and everybody making movies on their own, I don't know, that would have been a great thing to go for, but you can't get hired. I don't know. Yeah. And I graduated. I decided to do something very, very marketable. Business administration and communication. I'm like, I need a job that I know I can get a job. Something that was versatile. I don't know. A
valuable degree.
Yeah, like a business. Okay, sounds good. But I had raised my kids. I didn't have any work experience, really. I did a couple internships, but I mean, you can't discount your experience. And probably that, certainly in music, especially if you're going to perform, your experience is way more valuable than, look, I learned some musical stuff at school.
I know my scales.
And they gave me a paper, I think that the practical experience and know-how is worth more, or at least as much.
Yeah, and plus it makes it more fun. All right. Well, thanks for talking with me, Becky.
You bet. Anytime. We'll
have to do it again. I mean, we can, like I said, we can do it over phone another time because we have that option. But since we're here, might as well talk about all the excitement you've done and
all the excitement,
your musical shenanigans,
my musical ventures.
All right. Well, thank you,
Jeff.
Becky.
All right. Thanks.